Hello everyone. Today I am going to try to learn 3D sculpting. Uh, I've done this a few times where I've sort of tried to learn, tried to do some stuff. I've slightly edited my VRM model before. Um, it was a bit of a weird thing. You needed Unity and a bunch of other stuff to do it. But I haven't done that much. I haven't done modeling from scratch at all, at least not since high school, and I haven't really done that much with it. So, my plan is to just try to watch some of these videos on how to use Blender and see where I get with that. So, this is one that I'm looking at, Sculpting with Blender for Beginners by Ryan King Art. And I'm probably just going to be switching between this window and the Blender window, and we'll just see what we can glean from this. I definitely don't remember any of the shortcuts. Shortcuts are usually important to workflow.
In Blender. So if you've never sculpted in Blender before, or maybe you've sculpted a little bit, but you kind of need to know kind of the basic things to get started, I'm going to show you all the basic stuff and all the tools that I use to do sculpting in Blender. Now you can see above me, I have this camera right here that you can see on the screen. And I have this here because I wanted to show you my setup, because I think the setup is really important to being able to sculpt efficiently and sculpt well. And it's also important like where your keyboard is, because you're going to be using your keyboard for shortcut keys. Now I first wanted to talk about what tools you're going to use for sculpting. So I would highly recommend you not use a mouse, because computer mice really aren't made for sculpting. They're really just made for, moving around.
I'll go ahead and skip ahead a little on this because I already have a tablet and am aware of the wonders of tablets.
And clicking on buttons. Your mouse just isn't really good, so you're not able to use that. And also, starting out with sculpting, you could do a little tablet. I Wacom pad tablet. I like to. It's a lot bigger than these. Able to like stop the canvas. Actually, one look, we don't check that one tablets, but hand on the drawing tablet. All right.
So the one thing I am worried about is I'm not sure that my keyboard is super accessible, so this might get a little bit annoying, but we'll just do our best and see where we go here. Let's see.
Alright, so now that we've talked about tablets, let's actually jump into Blender and start doing some sculpting. So I'm going to start off by deleting everything. Delete the cube, lamp, and camera.
Okay. Delete. Delete. Delete.
And the crosshair got out of place, so I'll just press Shift C to hop it back to the center. I'm going to press Shift A, and I'm going to add, under Mesh, I'm going to add an icosphere. You can add any object that you want, but I'm going to add an icosphere just because I think it would be a good thing to start sculpting out with. If you click on the Add Icosphere settings right here, you can change this value. Change it up slowly, because if you change it up really quickly and make it a really high number, Blender's probably going to crash because there'll be too many vertices. So just bring it up slowly. I'm just going to go with 7.
An icosphere. Alright then. Shift A. Icosphere. And aha. I do not have a too shitty computer to do this. Excellent.
And that's not too high for me. Okay, and now that I have this nice, smooth, round sphere, I'm going to go over and click on this sculpting tab. And here we are in the sculpting layout. So you can see that there are a bunch of brushes right over here. There's also sculpt mode, edit mode, and object mode. If you're in the layout, you can also just go over to sculpt mode right here. But I like going over to the sculpting tab so that the workspace is already set up. You can see that there's some settings right here like radius and strength and some other settings, and we're going to go over the most important ones that I use. And then also over here you can see there's other settings. These settings are actually the same as here. You can see there's the radius and the strength and the radius and strength. So all these settings up here are also going to be on this side panel right here. So I'm first going to go over all the different brushes that I use. I'm not going to go over every single brush because there are a lot of brushes, but you can definitely play around with all these different brushes. So if you...
Isn't there a way to make this, okay, so sculpting tab. Yeah, that looks better.
Click right here, you can click and drag out. If you pull it out once, then it'll just have 2 rows of brushes. This is how I like it because I don't really use very many of the brushes down here. I mostly of the brushes. I just bump the mic the brushes. So when you're using your drawing tablet, now it's really going to depend on what you've programmed these buttons to do, but most pens should have a front and back button. And if you go into your driver settings on your computer, you should be able to program these, but I just have these buttons set at the default. So if I click with the front button and move around, this is actually going to rotate the view. Now you can't really see it rotating because we're in the very center, but if I like just draw something, now you can see we're rotating around the object. Also, if you want to just click and drag on this little circle right here, you can rotate around. You can see right there. I don't really like to use this because I like to use shortcut keys to work faster. So to remove these things, because I don't use them, you can just click on that button and that'll remove those little widgets right there. Okay, so now we know how to move around. To zoom in, you hold down Control and click with your front mouse button. So I can just hold down Control and click, and that'll go in and out. So I can zoom in and zoom.
Okay, let's get some hands on with this. See what we got. So I've got this. What's the undo in this? Alright, fine. Don't work when I click it in the menu, but do work when I am using the keyboard shortcuts. Alright then. So I want to turn on the mirroring thing. Ah, yeah, here we go. So I don't think my buttons are set up the same way as him. Let's pop on over to Wacom. Touch ring is not what I want. Touch and gestures, not what I want. Is this it? Ah, here we go. Alright, so here I can add Blender. Wait, Blender wasn't in that list, right? Oh, it was. Okay. I'll add Blender, so then I can have settings that only work in Blender. I use this a lot for like if I'm in one art program and Control Z means undo, but then if I'm in another and it's actually Alt Z, right? So the same button I always would keep as undo, but look at the grip pen. Okay, so what am I gonna need here for the grip pen? Backwards is double click, forwards is right click. So if I just right click. That's not what we use to move. So what button is the shortcut for moving this around? Because he said his was set to the defaults. The shortcut is numpad 3, numpad 1, and numpad 7. So let's try this. I'm going to go into here and I'm going to set my first one to a keystroke, and it's going to be 3. And this will be rotate X. Okay? Now let's see if that works. If I want to rotate it, I just click and it doesn't rotate. Alright, that's fine. So, oh, I guess the shortcut is just to preset the viewpoint. So what's the shortcut for rotation? You know, alright, he probably isn't going to go into this, so Blender shortcut for rotate camera. You can also rotate, okay, just to hold down the middle mouse button and drag in the direction we want to rotate the camera. Okay, so go in here. I don't want this one, so let's click middle click. Let's see if this works. Much better. Alright, so now I've got that set up. The rudeness. Now I can actually keep going.
Zoom out. And if you hold down Shift and then click on, you can zoom in mouse button. So I can just hold down Control and click, and that'll go in and out. So I can zoom in.
Can I do that if I hold down Control and then click? Yes. Okay. We good?
In and zoom out. And if you hold down Shift and then click on your middle mouse button and hold it down, you can pan. And you can see down here, there's the shortcut key.
Hey Ray, this looks fun to learn, but my brain just sucks at learning new things. Oh man, I feel that. Like, my brain fog has been pretty bad. So, I just decided I'm just gonna try to power through it today and we'll see how it goes. Worst comes to worst, I feel at least confident enough that I can make a slime from like Slime Rancher. We'll see.
Keys if you want to see what I'm doing. Also, if you want to change the center of your view to a certain area, you can hold down Alt and then middle click on an area, and that'll move you around to that area. Also, if you want to jump to a spot where you've just recently sculpted, like if I sculpted right here and then I want to zoom into that, you can press the period key on the number pad. It's kind of far away over here, but you can click on the period key and it's going to jump you over to that. And then if I sculpt down here.
Okay, so Alt lets me click. All right. Alt click. Alt click. Okay, I'm kind of getting how this works. Whoa, where'd my little buddy go? Is this just a pure round ball? No. Alright, I made it work. Ooh, okay. That's exciting.
And then press the period key again. It's going to hop me over there.
And period key. Alright. Well, moving on.
And then of course you can also use the Alt key and click with your button and it'll move you around. I actually don't use the Alt key very much because I want to keep my right hand on the Shift and Control key so that I can very quickly use Shift to pan, Control to zoom in and out, and then just let go if I want to rotate around.
Speaking of which, this is probably going to be a lot easier if I look at the buttons. So, what are my buttons set to? Functions. Okay, so this is Shift and Control and Alt. Alright, that's going to be useful. Let's go back to our tutorial.
And that brings me to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is how to set this all up. So I am left-handed, if you haven't figured that out yet, but I believe most people in the world are right-handed. And so if you're right-handed, you're probably going to be sculpting better with your right hand. And if you're going to do that, you're probably going to want your keyboard to use the Control and Shift key on the other side so that you can sculpt with your right hand and then use the shortcut keys with your left hand. So really just play around with your setup and try to get it so that it works well for you. I've also got down muscle memory, so I don't even really think about the Shift and Control keys. It might take you a little...
I didn't even notice that came unplugged. Let's fix that. Oh gosh. Oh god. Fuck. Well, there goes my phone. I have this table that goes over my bed, and the freaking cable got caught under the wheel. And while I was trying to fix it, freaking tossed my phone halfway across the room. But computer's not gonna die, so we're good.
A while to get used
that said, I might not see comments for a while.
to this, moving around, but now it's just muscle memory and I don't even think about the Shift and Control keys. And if you look down here at the screencast keys, you can see that I'm very quickly going Shift and then Control and Shift and Control just to move around wherever I want, and I have full control and I'm not really...
Alright, let's just try out that Shift and Control thing. So, Shift... Okay, so that's what Shift does. And Control is for zoom. Okay. That's easy enough.
Even thinking about it. So when you're starting out with sculpting, it might be a bit hard and clunky, but once you get that muscle memory, once you practice enough, it's going to be really easy to navigate, just like if you were navigating in the 3D. You can see here, this is the draw brush. So if I just click and drag, you can see it's basically just kind of making a little lump. This brush works really well, and you can see that this brush is making the digital clay come out, but if you want to make the digital clay go in, you can hold down the Control key while you're sculpting, and you can see that it's going to now carve in instead of out.
Okay, so pressing down normally. Yes. Holding down Control. Interesting. So it seems like if you want to go deeper, you have to click it completely one more time. That doesn't look terribly horrific. We'll see.
And also, if you want to change that right here, you can see the direction. There's add and subtract. So if I change it to subtract, it'll now go in. If I change it to add, it'll go out. Now, as I said earlier, I'm only going to go over the brushes that I mostly use. You can definitely check out all of them, but I'm going to go to the next one, which I mostly use, which is the clay strips. And this is the brush that I use the most. So this one basically just adds layers of clay on to your mesh, and it works the same way. So if you hold down Control, you can see it'll now sculpt in, Now there is something that I like to change to this brush, and that
No changes to the brush till we got the brush figured out. Alright. Clay strips. Give this strange creature a headband. Yeah. Does look pretty blocky. But his also looks blocky, so. And control. Alright, that looks good.
that is turning on this auto smooth. I just personally like it because I find that the clay strips brush isn't very smooth. Now I wouldn't suggest turning this up very high, maybe just turn it up to like 0.1 or 0.2.
Let's try this. 0.1. That does look a lot better. Let's try 0.2. Hard to tell if that's better. I mean, I guess it looks a bit more clear. We'll go with 0.2 for now. Let's revert this poor soul back to his original.
But you can see if I turn up this auto smooth, now when I sculpt, it's just going to be smoothing out the mesh while you're sculpting. So you can see here is how it looks with auto smooth turned off. And then if you turn auto smooth to maybe like 0.1, you can see it's definitely a lot smoother. And the difference, if that's, so this basically just kind of adds a blob. I use is this inflate brush. So this basically just kind of adds a blob, sort of inflates it. The next brush that I use is similar. It's called the blob brush, and it just basically adds a blob. I don't use this very much, but I use it a little bit sometimes. And the next brush is the crease brush. So this brush I really like, I use it a lot. This basically adds a crease to wherever you sculpt. So you can see if I sculpt here, you can see it starts to add that crease in there. And then if I hold down control, I can do the opposite.
Oops. Okay, so let's try out this brush. How is it different from this one? Guess it looks more consistent. Alright. Get some good eye sockets with this one. And creases. Like a big old frog mouth with dimples. Well, whichever. Alright. Yeah, both of these look like they'd be good for wrinkles in like clothes or people's souls.
Opposite, which is going to make like a peak right there. And the next brush is this scrapes brush. So basically what this does is it kind of like takes the clay and kind of like flattens it, sort of. It kind of like scrapes off a layer of clay and flattens it. So you can see here, it kind of makes different angles. So if I'm like trying to make angles of like a face, like if I'm trying to make the side plane of like the cheek or something, or the angles of the forehead, I can use this to kind of get the planes of the face, or just get the right shape of your object. You can see it kind of like flattens it out and scrapes off clay. So I really like this one. So
Alright, where we got this scrape tool. I am not pressing control. What is up with this nonsense? There we go. Alright, so if I use the scrape tool, is it actually gonna cut off the top? Does it actually make it smaller? Is it not big enough? That's actually pretty useful for making this crevice less block looking. Let's compare the two sides. Yeah, that was definitely taking some stuff off the top. Could make a good eye ridge there or something.
So the next one is this grab brush. So this one you can just grab and drag, just click down on a part of the mesh and drag it, and it's gonna pull the mesh around. So if I was like,
What is going on there? Okay. I remember seeing this one. Whoa. That gets really weird looking. Let's not do that one. Alright.
like sculpting a face, maybe this is a head, I can just grab this and pull out a jaw, and maybe like pull this back a little bit, and maybe pull this down a bit. And then another brush that I like to use a lot is this snake hook. And what this brush does is basically what the image shows. It just basically pulls out the mesh, and it kind of looks like a snake.
It's like little Kabuto legs. Alright. Control is the zoom, yeah? Okay. Zoomed out. I want to try this grab tool again. Let's see if I can... Yeah, let's undo most of this. Okay. I don't think I need those either. Whoops. What have I done? What have I done? Modeling, sculpting. Okay, now we're back. Whew. I was worried. Alright, so let's say I want to turn this into a face. So I can make this bigger. What's he got his set to? Like 77? Let's try 80. Alright. So if I'm gonna grab it, pull out, rotate. Yeah. Oh. That's why. Alright, so let's go ahead and undo that. Now let's try again. The frick is... Well, okay, that's my fault. Doesn't look very much like a jawline yet, does it? Think anime thoughts. There's a smooth brush or something. Let me try this. This is starting to look like Calliope. Man, these can look really ugly from other angles. Grab. Where's the grab? Grab. You need a chin. This is where cheekbones would be. Wow, this looks frightening. Flatten. That looks almost face-like. And let's see, how am I gonna... Let's try to get just here. Making ourselves a schnoz. Roughly. And then the cheekbones would be like right here. And you can press Control, vaguely eye sockety indents. Looks a bit like Lewis from Family Guy. That's schnoz. Alright, alright. I mean, it's vaguely humanoid, right? You could add a crease here. And we can have a mouth. Or just the under part of the... Oh, whoa. Definitely rotate it and see how what you did looks at different angles, cause... Dang. Alright, How about if I go with the crease lower? It keeps trying to merge the crease with the nose. Well, anyway.
And then the last one that I use is this pose brush. So this one is really good for like if you're making a character and you want to like move the limbs around, you can click on an area and rotate it and it's going to pose your mesh. So it
Wiggle
doesn't
them
work
little
very well for like places like this. It's
creepy
pretty weird and
legs.
doesn't work very well, but it works good for like limbs, like maybe an arm or a leg of a character. And the last brush that I use a lot is the smooth brush. So you can see it's right up here. I actually skipped.
Aha! I knew there was a smooth brush. Slightly less horrifying. Just a tad. And it still looks vaguely like a human head, so I'm gonna call that a win.
Over it when I was going down, but the smooth brush basically just smooths out any spot of the mesh. Okay, now let's go over the shortcut keys for these different brushes. So the grab brush is G, so if you press the G key, you can see that now I'm on the grab brush. So the smooth brush, you can press Shift S and that'll jump over to the smooth brush. You can see right there. But I actually don't really use that. I don't press Shift S and then go to the smooth brush. What I do is, let's say that I'm maybe sculpting, like maybe I'm sculpting right here and I'm adding some clay right here. Then if I want to smooth out the mesh, what you do is you hold down Shift and then just drag around and sculpt. It actually uses the smooth brush, so it's not using the draw brush. You can see it's just smoothing out the mesh. Then when I let go of the Shift key and draw, now it's using the draw brush again.
Okay, let's try that out. So let's say I'm gonna add there we go. What are you doing? I don't think it's supposed to be doing that. Didn't I already fix this? Grip pen. It's supposed to be middle click. Alright, yeah. Okay. And control is for zoom. So let's say we got a flattened thing, and then we're gonna add these giant eyebrows. Don't mess with them, they've got giant eyebrows. Alright, now we hold shift. Nice! It does work. The giant eyebrows don't look awful. I could even smooth it more on one side than the other, and then make it look more like eyebrow bones. Yeah, that's not awful. That's not what I wanted.
And then if I hold down Shift, it's going to go back to the smooth brush. And if you want to get to the draw brush, the shortcut key is X. You can see right here, if I just hover over, you can see the shortcut right here. There's Shift spacebar, but then there's also the X key. I use shortcut keys for like the grab brush and the smooth brush, but the other brushes, I just find it really easy to just move up and then click on whatever brush I want to use. So it's really your preference whether you want to just go over and click on one of the brushes or use the shortcut key. Alright, now you can see here that there's this radius and strength. And you can see they're also over right here, radius and strength. So the radius changes the size of the brush. So if I make this bigger, you can see now it's a really big brush. Also the strength, if I change the strength up, it's going to be a lot stronger. You can see it's coming out a lot more. And also I'm pressing Control Z to undo my action. Shift Control Z will redo an action and Control Z will undo an action. That's pretty standard with most programs. Now there are
I'm gonna make my life easier, and I'm just gonna do what I would normally do, which is undo button. I think I'm probably gonna need that.
shortcut keys for the radius and strength. If you press F, it's going to change the radius. So you can see I can just press F, move this up and make it bigger, or F again, make it smaller. And so you can very quickly just use the F key to change that. And then if you want to change the strength, you can press Shift F. So if I press Shift F, now you can see there's this, it kind of gets black and then it kind of gets more transparent. The darker it is, the stronger it's going to be. You can see here now it's 1, and then it's like 0.7, 0.6, 0.5. And if you make it a lot smaller, it's going to be not very strong at all. Now I wanted to go over what's called mat caps.
Okay, so we're gonna use F. So the inner ring is what it used to be. Interesting. I've stopped pressing F, but it's still... Alright, the undo button I programmed works. What about we add G for grab? Pull those cheekbones out. I feel like...
Because you can see that this kind of white look is maybe a little bit boring and it might be kind of hard to see the form of your sculpt. So if I go up here and click on this drop down menu, you can see that there's different mat caps. And I've actually imported more mat caps. If you want to add your own mat caps or create your own, there are tutorials on YouTube. You can check that out on how to like make your own mat caps or import your own mat caps.
Here's the mat caps. Okay. Studio light, brown clay. What is this? Studio light. Oh, interesting. Okay. So that really makes all the little lumps and stuff stand out. Let's do this one. It's got enough gay vibes. I like it.
So you're probably not going to see all of these because I've added in my own, but you can just like click on a mat cap, like maybe this red one. So why mat caps are so important is because they show you the form of the mesh. Because if I move around here, you can see there's like different reflections and stuff. And you can also use these studio. So if you want to use these different studio ones, you can. Now you may have noticed that while I've been sculpting, it's mirroring it to the other side of the object. And that's because the symmetry feature is turned on. So the symmetry settings are this is going to be pretty similar on either side. Mirror X, that's the main one that you're going to use. You could also use Y and Z if you want. And it's turned on default because I think most people are going to be sculpting like a to show you
Wasn't turned on default
what
for me.
these like is it uses the pen pressure sensitivity in your turned on default. What this does is it uses the pen pressure sensitivity in your pen default, like some lines around it. If you have this turned on, which it is turned on default, what this does do turn it off really easily. Most people are going to be. So you could also use Y and Z character or a face. but you can turn it off really easily just right there. Now I wanted to show you what these two buttons.
Mine was not turned on by default. Let's see how that works. I have opened the third eye. Oh, goodness. Okay, what did I just do? Alright, so that was with the grab brush. Let's see. Where could this face use some work? Let's try changing this up a little. Oh, I could make it into one of those cool robot things. Smooth it out, smooth it out. Oh, alright. I can shrink things by smoothing them too. Thinking about what those big old helmets, you know, they have like a dome and then they go really thin near the bottom. That might be kind of cool. I have to undo all of my Alright, just gonna smooth out those eyebrow ridges. They're gone now. And what are we gonna do here? Let's try pulling out on the face. It would be nice if I could put like a fully formed face right next to it so I could look at it. I'm sure there's a way to do that. I just don't know yet. So let's say I want to get rid of this nose. And I want to make one of those helmet shapes. How am I going to do that? I like pull this out a little. So the side piece, I think that this would need to be collapsed in more. And then they go up. That's a bit like how those things go. Yeah. Yep. 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 Give me the shapes. Okay. That's looking pretty similar to those cool sci-fi helmet things. bubble. Let's control. Clay strips. Oops. Oh, I see. So this is what he was talking about, where my pen pressure is making the difference between the sizes here. Gotta say, this thing where it keeps thinking a button is pressed, I'm unamused. Oh, there we go. Shift. Oh, this one's pretty nice for working on those. Okay. Yeah. And smooth this down. Just get this weird tentacle looking nose now. Yeah, it looks kind of like an animal nose. So let's say this is an animal. And we're gonna make a better brow ridge. That looks kind of cool. I don't know what that checkered nonsense is, but nothing the smooth brush can't fix. Huh. Now then, what do I want to do for lips? Alright, okay. No. Now saying this is the bottom lip, smooth that out. Looks more like a really distended upper lip, though. I don't know, it's interesting looking, though. I think I'm sort of getting the hang of it.
Let's do. So this one right here, you can see it looks like a little pen with like some lines around it. If you have this turned on, which it is turned on default, what this does is it uses the pen pressure sensitivity in your pen to change the size of the brush, because this is the radius, so it's the size. So you can see right here, if I sculpt very lightly, I'm not pressing very hard, it is a pretty small width. And then if I push down really hard, you can see now it's really big. Now if you want to turn this off, you can just press the button and now it'll be turned off, and it's not going to use the pressure sensitivity to change the size of the brush. And then that's the same for
I kind of like it, though.
this right here. So that's the strength. So the strength is like how hard it's going to be. So if I just press down pretty lightly, it's not going to go up very much. But if I press down really hard, it's going to be coming out a lot more. And then what this button does right here, it looks like some paint brushes. What this does is it makes the size of the brush, or the strength, the same between all the brushes. So right now the radius is turned on. So if I just press F, make this a little bigger, maybe I sculpt a bit, and then I go to another brush, you can see that now it's the same. It's 82 pixels. If I go to another one, you can see this one's 82 pixels as well. If I go to this one, 82 pixels, they're all the same. So you may or may not want to use this, it really depends. If I turn this off, you can see that now the radius is only 35 pixels because that's the default. Then if I go over to a different brush, like the clay strips brush, and scale it up, you can see now it's a lot bigger. Maybe that's too big, and I can just sculpt in there. and then maybe I go to the draw brush and there it is at 129, and then I can go back to the clay strips and that's 114. So if you want each brush to be a different size, then just leave this off, and every time you go into the different brush, you can change the size. But if you want each brush to stay the same, so if I make a brush this big, I want all the other brushes to stay 100 pixels. Now there is one other brush that I wanted to show you, and that is the mask brush. So I don't use this brush very much, but sometimes I use it. So let's say this is not a very good face, but let's just say I'm making a face and I want to extrude out the character's neck. What I can do is I can use this mask brush and I can mask around the spot that I want the character's neck to come out of. So I can just mask it in, and now if I try to sculpt on it, you can see that wherever the mask is, you're not going to be able to sculpt on it. So how I'm going to extrude out the neck is I'm going to press Control I, and Control I will invert the mask. So now you can see everything's affected except that little area. And then pull it. So I can just pull out the neck right there. And then when I want to get rid of the mask brush, I can press Alt M. So Alt M is...
That's gonna take some practice. Alright, so what does this guy need? What do you need, sir? A little bit more smoothing. Wonder if I can crease under the nose a little. Huh. Interesting. Looks a bit more nose-ish. But I bet I could crease it more. I think I liked it better before. Maybe I want to make this nose a little bit more pronounced. So let's try G for the grab. Give him a butt nose. Maybe this will work better. If I want the nose to stand out more, I could just do this. How's that? Oh yeah, that looks way more nose-like. I should have done that from the beginning. Okay. Smooth that out a little. Yeah, that's a very respectable face. Alright, so let's get some more lip action going here. Crease. That's not the crease. This is the crease. That went in a little further than I was thinking, but that's okay. We can build it back up. We can make him better. It just looks like he's sucking in his mouth. Alright, let's... How are we gonna get these to turn into lips? Alright. Come on, buddy. It's a little bit less awful. I think this is kind of looking like Birdman, actually. Let's increase this nose. Now, if this was like cat person, I feel like they would have this triangle nose on the bottom. So I would need to create some sort of ridge here. Because then the little triangle nose would go like right here. But this part is supposed to be big and flat and schnozzed. Give us the schnoz. Alright, now let's say this is the triangle bit and we just want to flatten this up. Alright, I'm not getting the schnoz that I desire here. I might need to use a grab tool. G. Okay, so let's rotate this and bring... Can you go away, sir? Thank you. Let's bring the schnoz out. Schnoz, schnoz. Okay. But I want it to be... Yeah, okay. Schnozzed. Okay. That looks somewhat more nose-like. A little bit less stylized, maybe. And then like that, and then it'll make this nice... Yeah. That could definitely be some kind of critter's nose. I think so. Huh. Well, see, that made the thing right away, didn't it? Alright, let's smooth this out a little. And we still got our nose here. But now I feel like the tip is a little bit missing its distinctiveness. Can that go in? Yeah, that looks fairly cat-like. And I could make a little ridge right there with the reverse crease. Yes, yes. It's pretty good. No, the last one took way too much. Okay. Let's see here. Let's say we want to make this the lips. Oh. I don't know that that works. I mean, it's not awful. Let's see what we can get here. That sure is pointy. I don't think it needs to be quite that pointy. Let's try inflating this lower lip a little. Smoothing it out. Nope, gotta inflate more on the sides. Give us those lips. That is the crease, right? No, it's not. What is happening here? Let's see. Bubble that out. I mean, because cats usually have these big, plump Yeah, that looks cat-ish. Mm-hmm. Hmm. No. I might need to study anatomy for this. But meow, meow, meow. I mean, I don't think it looks that bad. Alright, now let's make these brow ridges a bit thicker. And then maybe some nice rounded cheeks. They don't look that bad from the side. Yeah. Could shove eyeballs into that. From below, the cheeks don't look very plump, though. Maybe we can fix that a little. From the side. So then there'd be like a giant mane all around there. And then like ears. What if I wanted to add ears? Grab. This could be wider. Oh, that is not what I thought I was doing. vague ear shapes. Alright, and let's say I want to smooth that. Okay. I think a crease would do good right there. And this looks almost like airplane cats. Making the ear a little more ear hold. That looks a little weird. You know, cat ears actually do have that little bump right there, so I guess that's not totally wrong. Smooth it out. This is not a triangle anymore. Vaguely lion-ish. Big cat-ish. Peer into the void of his eyes. Oh, wow. That's kind of fun, though. I don't know if the eyes have to be that deep. I'm mostly happy with this so far, I guess. Just a few little places that need to be smoothed. Made a little bit less ugly. Whoops. Not bad for a first attempt.
It's going to get rid of the mask, and now you can see I can now just continue to sculpt the entire thing. Now you also may have noticed that while I've been sculpting, this mesh is starting to get a little bit low detail. So I'm gonna pull out the nose here with the grab brush, and you can see here that as we're starting to pull this out, we have less and less mesh to work with. So we need more detail to sculpt. So there's two ways to add more detail, and they're both down right here. There's the Dyn Topo and the Remesh. First I'll show you the remesh, then I'll show you the Dyntopo. I actually like using Dyntopo better, but there are cases where I sometimes use the remesh. So let me just open up this remesh tab, and you can see here's the voxel size. That's how detailed you want it to be. So then I can click on remesh. You can also press Control R, that's the shortcut for remeshing. And if I do that, you can see it now remeshed our object. And it made it even less detailed because it's only 0.1. So that's actually really small detail. We want it to be a lot bigger because we can't really sculpt with this. There's just not enough detail. So if I change this to like 0.05 and then click on remesh, you can see it's even more detailed. I want it to be even more detailed, so maybe I'll change it to 0.01, remesh that. Make sure you're not going to make it too high though, because if you make it too high, your computer could crash or Blender could crash. So you can see here that's a lot better, and now we have a lot more detail to work with. And you can see it kind of looks like it has a weird texture to it. That's because we were really low detail, and then we went higher. So you're just going to need to like smooth that out and kind of sculpt it to fix that. But normally you're not going to have that issue very much. And now I'm going to actually like give this character like bunny ears just to show you what I mean. Okay, so I've added these kind of like bunny ear things. And you can see here that if I zoom in, you can see the mesh is starting to get low detail again because, yeah, it's starting to get pulled out and we need more geometry. So if I just hit remesh again, you can see once it's finished, it looks a little bit weird, but if I just click on shift and smooth that out, now this is all smoothed out, and now we have a lot more detail to work with. So I can use like the clay strips brush, hold down control, and make the inside of the bunny ears just like that, and now it has a lot more detail. Because if I was going to do that before, let me just Control Z that until we're back to the lower mesh. Here we are. If I try to sculpt in here, you can see it's been stretched out and pulled so much that I can't really sculpt inside the bunny's ear. But then if I remesh this, it gives it lots more detail, and I can just smooth that out and then press Control and then go in. So basically with this workflow, you're continuing to sculpt and then hitting remesh, and continuing to sculpt and then hitting remesh. So this is cool, but I like to use the other one, which is Dyntopo. So if I just turn this on, it might give you a little message. You can just click on OK. I like to use Dyntopo better because what this does is it adds geometry while you're sculpting. So I like it better because it's like more creative and you don't really have to worry about the like technical side of sculpting, or technical side of digital sculpting, I guess. So I like to use something maybe like 3 or 5 with the detail size. And now if I just start to sculpt here, you can see if I zoom in, it's going to keep on adding detail. So this is actually a little bit laggier. It's not quite as smooth because it's adding detail while you're sculpting. So if I make the brush really big, kind of zoom out, you can see that's the detail size. And then if I zoom in and sculpt, you can see now that's way more detail. You can see the difference from here to here. And then definitely play around with this. Like if you want to make this 10, you can see now it's going to be less detail. If you make this like 2, it's going to be really high detail. If you make it something really high, it'll start to get laggy like that. Now you can see it's kind of lagging, and it caught up, but it was a little bit laggy. And then also you can see there's this smooth shading. If you turn this on, then while you're sculpting, it's going to keep the shading really smooth. Let me just change this up to 5 again. You can see now when I'm sculpting, it has smooth shading and you can't see those vertices. I actually like to turn this off just because I like to see the vertices and just kind of see how the mesh is going. But you could definitely turn the smooth shading on if you prefer that. Now there's one more setting I wanted to go over within this Dyntopo. You can see right here, the detailing. Right now it's set to relative detail, but I can change it to constant detail. And if I change it to constant detail, I'm going to need to change this up, like maybe to 60 or something like that. Now when I'm sculpting, you can see there it is. And when I zoom in, it's going to be the same amount of detail. And this is really useful for certain things. I prefer to use the relative detail most of the time, so that when you're zooming in, if you want to like make one part of your sculpt more detailed, it'll just automatically make it more detailed.
I don't think I ran into that problem, but he had this set to like 5, yeah. Okay.
So it's really up to you which ones you want to use. Okay, so let's just say that I finished this bunny human character. This mesh is really high in density. You can see if I zoom in here, and I can actually go into wireframe mode. Let me just go into wireframe. You can see here is all the vertices, and this is really dense. It's really dense. So this might be a little bit hard on your computer, especially if you go back into object mode and you're trying to like do different stuff in the scene. And also you may want to share your sculpt with someone, so you might want to send it to them. And if it's a really high dense mesh, then the memory of the Blender file is going to be a lot more. And you also might want to upload this to like a website like Sketchfab, like if you want to upload your 3D models so that other people can look at them. If it's really high dense, if it's too dense, then you're not going to be able to upload it, and it's just going to be harder to work with. So I'm going to show you how to make your mesh a lot less dense while still keeping the details. So let's go over here to the modifiers, and I am back in object mode. I can just hop over back to the layout now. So I'm going to go over to the modifiers, and I'm going to add modifier, and I'm going to add the decimate modifier. So this value right here, the ratio, if I turn this down, it's going to take away more and more of the mesh. So let's just change this to maybe like 0.2. So this is going to take away 80% of the mesh and only keep 20% of it. So it's going to, calculate however it does it. It sometimes takes a little while to do, but now you can see if I move my mouse over and press, or move my pen over this and press Control A, that's going to apply it. And there we go. It took a moment to apply, but now it's applied. If I tab into edit mode now, you can see it's way less dense. This mesh is way less dense, but you didn't notice anything. When I added that in, you couldn't really see any difference. Let me just go back here so you can see it with it on. So if I press this button.
Okay. So where I can see the mesh? We're going to go back to where he did that.
Mesh is really high in density. You can see if I zoom in here, and I can actually go into wireframe mode. Let me just go into wireframe.
Okay, I was right. It was here. And if we want wireframe, yes. Okay. I can use that to smooth out some of these areas, maybe. Actually, I don't think this looks awful compared to how dense his was. Oh, why is there a little blip here, but not on the other side? I don't understand that. Well, alright.
You can see here is all the vertices, and this is really dense. It's really dense. So this might be a little bit hard on your computer, especially if you go with someone, so you might want to do different stuff in the scene. And also you may want to share your memory of the Blender, upload you're not going to be a lot less dense. I'm back in object mode. I can just hop over back. So let's go over here to the modifiers, and I am back in object mode. I can just hop over back to the layout now. So I'm going to go over to the modifier.
Okay, so we're going to go into object mode and layout. It's upside down. Well, that's life sometimes, buddy. Alright.
Modifiers, and I'm going to add modifier, and I'm going to add the decimate modifier.
Air, add modifier, the iconosphere, and then how did you get to add modifier?
And it's just going to be harder to work with. So I'm going to show you how to make your mesh a lot less dense while still keeping the details. So let's go over here to the modifiers.
Okay, click on the thing, add modifier, and we want decimate. And we want it set to point 0.2. Okay. And then, was it Control
And
A?
I am back in object mode. I can just hop over back to the layout now. So I'm going to go over to the modifiers and I'm going to add modifier and I'm going to add the decimate modifier. So this value right here, the ratio, if I change this to maybe like 20% of it. So it's going to, calculate however it does it. It sometimes takes a little while to do, but now you can see if I move my mouse over and press, or move my pen over this and press Control A, that's going to apply it. And there we go. It took a moment to apply, but now it's applied.
Control A. Did it work? Control A. I can't really tell. Let's look at the wireframe. Oh, okay. So 0.2, enter. Oh, I'd already applied it. Okay. I remember hearing something about how all your triangles need to make boxes instead of other shapes for like efficiency reasons. But maybe that's too high of a pay grade for what we're looking at right now. Let's see. How am I going to rotate this? And got it. All right. Very reasonable looking feline-ish thing. But I think some of the weird choke points are still here.
If I tab into edit mode now, you can see it's way less dense. This mesh is way less dense, but you didn't notice anything. When I added that in, you couldn't really see any difference. Let me just go back here so you can see it with it on. See it in percent. Make this too small, like 0.01 or something, then it's going to actually start to destruct your mesh. You can see there now it's so low that it's starting to get kind of low poly. So definitely don't turn this too low, but like 0.2, that's going to take away a ton of the memory, but your mesh is still going to look the same. Now I did want to show you a common problem that could happen. Let's say you're trying to make a character, so maybe you're like adding a sphere, and then maybe you want to scale it up because maybe you want to make the head kind of round, so maybe you're going to scale it up, something like that. Then maybe you add a subsurf. Let me just turn that way up, and then I'll just apply that. And now let's go into sculpting. So now if I try to sculpt this, something looks off here. You can see that the circle is rounded, and if I try to sculpt, something is definitely wrong here. You can see it's kind of stretched out. The brush is really stretched out. It's like going way up, and you've probably figured out why this is happening. It's because I scaled the mesh. So for a while when I was first learning how to sculpt, I kept having this issue because I was like modeling an object like this, And then I would go into sculpt mode and the brushes were acting really weird and I didn't know why. So what I need to do to fix this is I need to apply the object scale. If I press the N key, you can see here's the location, rotation, and scale. You can see the scale is totally scaled up, but these are all at 0. So what I can do is I can apply the scale. So what I do is I press Control A, that'll bring up this apply menu, and then you can choose location, rotation, or scale, or all transforms. I'm just going to click on scale, and now sculpting and also kind of the technical side of it, like the different brushes and things like that, and the different settings. But I also wanted to talk about the artistic side of sculpting, because even if you know all the brushes and know how to use all the settings, it still takes a lot of practice to get good at sculpting. And I have definitely come a long way. I'm going to put up on the screen over there some of my first sculpts when I started sculpting. I think I've been sculpting for about 3 years now, and I've been using Blender for a little over 4 years. But you can see right here up on the screen, some of these sculpts are really bad. And so if your sculpts are looking like this, don't feel bad. You can definitely improve, because this is how I started out. Just like drawing or painting or another artistic skill, sculpting takes a lot of work and practice to get good. Now here are my more recent sculpts, and you can see, I think we can all agree that these are definitely improved. I'm still practicing a lot and I'm trying to get better. I know that I still have a lot to learn, but I think I've definitely improved, as you can see from my first sculpts to like 3 years or so later. So if you're starting out and your sculpts are looking really bad, just know that that probably happens with pretty much everyone, and it just takes some time to learn how to sculpt. If you keep on practicing, you're gonna get
I have clicked nothing. How dare you?
better. But I do have a few tips for you that I think are important to know to get better at sculpting faster. So my first tip is to use a drawing tablet. Now I know I talked about this earlier, really different angles, because you can see here on my first sculpts, I don't think I was doing that enough. I was kind of just sculpting from maybe the front, and you can see my faces especially looked very flat. And that was also just me really not understanding the forms and also not really knowing the anatomy of the face very well, but definitely moving around constantly,
Call me out like that.
sometimes looking from the left, sometimes looking from the right, because you're not really drawing here, you're really working with 3D forms. So move around, look at lots of different angles to get your shapes right. My next tip is getting familiar with the object that you're sculpting. So for instance, if you want to sculpt heads or if you want to sculpt characters, then learning anatomy is really important. I mostly want to learn how to sculpt faces and heads, so I'm trying to get better at facial anatomy. I'm trying to learn that. I've been sculpting some skulls so I can kind of get the idea of the facial structure, like the bone structure. I also heads are, and where the anatomy is really helpful, important. Next, we're kind of doing some maybe challenge where you're soup for us to remember all the details in different view here. So I have where, and then I have a nice layout with a bunch of different images, and then I can just look at it while I'm sculpting or while I'm drawing or whatever I'm doing. So if you want to check out that program called Is to Do Sculpting Tutorial, link in I'm doing a bunch of different I can move. I can do is reference lead. I think it's going to help different things for all of my artwork, because it's kind of hard for us to remember all the details in different things.
Trying to find out what program that is he's talking
Things
about.
like, for instance, sculpting a head. I highly suggest using reference. I really think it's going to help you to sculpt better. There's also a program called PureRef, and I'll leave a link to PureRef in the video description. And PureRef is a really great reference photo program. So I have a multiple screen setup on my computer, and what I can do is I can open up the PureRef software, and then I can add in images, and I can move them and rotate them and scale them, and I can just kind of get a nice layout with a bunch of different images, and then I can just look at it while I'm sculpting or while I'm drawing or whatever I'm doing. So if you want to check out that program called PureRef, I'll leave a link in the video description. Sculpting tutorials on YouTube and digital clay. So I know that there are a lot of YouTube channels out there that have sculpting videos, but these two YouTube channels are my two favorite. So Flip Normals and Digital Clay. I really recommend. ZBrush is in Blender, especially getting feedback from artists who are more skilled than you. And there are some different places to get feedback online for free. I have heard about some Facebook groups, and I also have gotten some feedback on some Discord servers. So definitely look around, and I'm sure there's some different places online where you can get feedback. Also to give you some fun, I give work hundreds of heads, and I still have a lot to learn. I'm going to put a bunch of images up here to show you a bunch of different heads that I've sculpted, and this isn't even all of the heads that I've sculpted even more. just to show you that it does take a really long time, but if you keep on pretty fun, it happens. Linked to the website down below in the video description. So Sculpt January is a sculpting art challenge that happens in January, and there's a calendar where every day there's a word, and you're supposed to sculpt something that's related to that word.
I just missed it.
So after the month of January, you have 31 finished sculpts. So every day you sculpt one thing, and it really helps to just get in a ton of sculpting practice. I've actually done this for 3 years already. So I did it in January 2018, 2019, so that's going to wrap it up for this video. I hope that this video has helped you to get started with sculpting.
It's actually a very useful video. Well, guess now what I need to do is practice. One thing I didn't learn that I would like to learn is I want to know how to make it so that I have, like, let's say I wanted to make an animal and I wanted to be able to give it different types of ears or different types of eyes. I want to know how I would sculpt the pieces separately so that they can all come together. But, you know, who knows? Maybe I'll find something. I'll keep looking. In any case, I'm feeling pretty okay about this guy that I made. He seems pretty chill with those, I think